4 hours sleep, and by 9:30 the next morning, I'd already been through the crisps twice. Second day running, I kept telling myself it was a discipline thing, that I just needed to try harder. It wasn't the first time I'd had that thought either. 13 years of tracking this stuff, and it took me an embarrassingly long time to spot the pattern. Today, I'm showing you the exact night it clicked, what 4 hours sleep actually does to the hormones that decide whether you can say no to the biscuit tin. The night in question, 17th of October, 25, logged in real time, not remembered after the fact, what ghrelin and leptin were actually doing while I stood there with a family bag of crisps open, why the scale barely moved the next morning, even though I'd eaten more. That's the bit that properly threw me. So here's the thing that didn't add up. By that point, I'd been doing the rhythm reset for months. Metabolic flexibility, they call it. Body's meant to be good at handling a rough day without it derailing anything. Day 5, weight 13 stone 10, same as it had been for a week. Energy, 6 out of 10. Mood, weirdly, an 8. I know it doesn't make sense. I'll come back to that though. 4 hours sleep the night before, not planned, just happened. And by mid-morning, I'd been through half a family bag of crisps. Second day in a row. Conventional wisdom, my own conventional wisdom if I'm honest, said you know better than this. So don't do it. I tracked enough plants, enough calories, enough fasting windows to know exactly what a bad food choice looked like on paper. Knowing it though didn't stop my hand going back in that bag. And it wasn't a one-off. 3 weeks later, different context entirely. A hospital appointment got cancelled after I'd walked 3.5 hours to kill time, came home starving and mentally fried. And a full tub of millionaire shortbread was just gone. 2,000 calories near, damn it. Wasn't even hungry in the normal sense, just running on nothing. Then a few weeks after that, this one's a bit different. I'm a day out of the surgery, 2 hours sleep, anaesthetic still doing its thing, bought a packet of chocolate hobnobs to line my stomach before the painkillers. Told myself 1 or 2. 3/4 of the packet had gone before I'd registered anything. I was just eating them. 3 separate weeks, 3 separate reasons on paper. Stress, boredom, drugs wearing off. Same trigger underneath every single time. Took me a stupidly long time to see it. 17th of October, 4 hours of sleep, energy a 6 out of 10. Weight was holding at 13 stone 10 at the time, despite the crisps, which is odd on its own. We'll get to that. Ghrelin was up, leptin was down. 6th of November, 4th night running on 4 hours. Weight had dropped slightly, 13.8. Same story, sleep gone, hunger hormones doing what they do. And this time it wasn't crisps. It was an entire tub of shortbread. 22nd of November, 2 hours sleep post-surgery. 22 months into this whole thing by that point. 4.5 stone down, off every medication since February 24. And I'm sat in the car with a packet of hobnobs going down me, really without deciding to eat any of them. And that's the bit that rattled me. Not the crisps, not the shortbread, the fact that 22 months of doing this properly and I hadn't switched it off. I think what I'd assumed, and this was a wrong assumption, I'll say that plainly, was that enough months of good habits eventually overwrites the bad patterns. Turns out, well for me, not really how it works. The pattern doesn't disappear, it just waits for the conditions that trigger it. And the condition, every single time across those 3 incidents, was short sleep. Here's the mechanism. Because I went looking for it properly rather than just accepting my own theory. Peter Attia, longevity doctor, wrote Outlive, cites research on exactly this. Chronic sleep deprivation suppresses leptin and elevates ghrelin. And people end up eating roughly 300 extra calories the next day, specifically reaching for high sugar, high fat food, not random extra food, specifically stuff I was reaching for. Crisps, shortbread, hobnobs. Ghrelin's your hunger signal. Leptin's meant to be the you've had enough signal. 4 hours sleep and the two of them basically swap roles for a day. Hunger goes up, satiety goes down. It goes quiet. It's not a mood. It's not a discipline failure. It's the actual chemistry doing the opposite of what you need it to do. If you're at the stage where you're asking questions before things get serious, this is what this channel's for. Real data, real GP conversations, and properly documented. It's not a bloke shouting about superfoods. Subscribe if that sounds more useful. Honestly, this wasn't one light bulb moment. I wish I could give you the exact day it clicked, because that would make a better story. But that's not what happened, so I'm not going to pretend it did. It was slow. Podcasts mostly, a few books, bit of it landing here and there over months. The Ghrelin leptin thing coming up again and again until it stopped being someone else's science and started sounding like my own Tuesday. It wasn't until I went back through the rhythm reset log properly, sat down and lined up the 3 days, that it stopped being a vague feeling and became an actual pattern that I could point at. There's a name for this in fasting terms. I call the Ghrelin hunger wave the tantrum. It's the same spike that hits around hour 16 to 20 of a fast. Turns out it's the same tantrum here. Different trigger, bad sleep instead of a long fasting window. Same hormone throwing the same strop. Here's the thing about leptin that took me a while to get my head around. Your loose cistern's got a little float on an arm. When the tank's full, the float sits high and shuts the valve off. Flush it, water drops. Flow drops with it. Valve opens back up. Brilliant system, but only in one direction. It's very good at spotting empty. Fill me up. It's not built to notice. Actually, that's plenty. Stop. Leptin's the same. It's a low fuel light, not a full tank light, and sleep deprivation can trip that low fuel signal even when nothing's actually changed about your fat stores. The tank hasn't emptied. The float's just been knocked down anyway. What this suggested to me, and I want to be honest, this is one person's data, not a study, was that willpower was never really the variable. Sleep was the variable. Every time sleep dropped below, say 6 hours, the hunger signal started misfiring, regardless of what else was going on that week. Stress, boredom, anaesthetic, different costumes, but the same underlying trigger. If I was starting this over again, the thing I'd watch for earlier is exactly this. Not, am I being disciplined today, but how did I sleep last night? That's the actual question. Not always an easy one to answer, mind. Sleep's not something you can just decide to have more of. Some weeks it's there, and some weeks it isn't. And no amount of wanting 8 hours, for me anyway, produces them. If you're already tracking your own data and you notice cravings spiking specifically the day after a short night, not every bad day, specifically the post-bad sleep ones, that's a pattern that's worth maybe mentioning to your GP as part of the bigger picture. Not a diagnosis, just a thread that might be worth pulling. And if you're at the stage where you're just noticing your energy's a bit off, or you keep failing at the evening snacking thing, no matter how hard you try, it might not be about trying harder at all. It might be worth having a rough look at your sleep before you go into interrogating your willpower. Not a warning, just something to be curious about, if that's where you're at. Awareness doesn't fix it. For what it's worth, 22 months into this, and I still lose to the hobnobs sometimes, but it does give me the choice. Sometimes I catch it now. Sometimes I don't. And sometimes I think, sod it. That's about as honest as I can be about where this actually sits. If you want to track your own sleep and hunger patterns the way I've been logging mine, the free 14-day rhythm reset guide, it's in the description. It's got a simpler version of the tracker that I use. And this is educational content only. It's not medical advice. Please do speak to your GP before changing your fasting pattern, diet or medication.